And you're live, Nico.
Oh, well, man. Well, someone want to tell me? I'm in Salos here. Jeff's not here. Couldn't hear a damn thing he was saying, so I'm live. Well, here we are live. Welcome to another episode of R-Rated Christianity. For those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. This is an apologetics podcast. It comes from the Greek word apologia, to give an answer or a defense for whatever you're defending. And we're not apologizing for being Christians. We're giving a defense and answer why we look at the world through a biblical lens, why we believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, why the Bible is authoritative and credible, and why we can depend on God's word and ultimately live it out, and then see that everything changes once we give our life to Christ. So that's the focus of us on R-Rated. For those that watch us on a regular basis, thank you. We appreciate your support. You know, for those, I guess I should have said this earlier, the R stands for real, raw, and redemptive. We have real conversations. Yes, at times we have them in a raw way, but ultimately all these conversations were hopefully leading us to a redemptive relationship with the first century Jew named Jesus Christ, who we believe is the Savior of the world. And so with all that being said, you know, we like to tackle current events, political events, theological topics. I mean, you know, we kind of go through phases or seasons. Every once in a while we have guests on the show. I think we're really going to start doing that again, right, Salo? We're going to talk about doing that.
Yes.
And we want to do that. But today, I mean, George, you kind of came up with this topic. We were going to go in a different, you know, kind of direction today. But I mean, with the address last night that President Trump had with the joint Congress, I mean, we had this, can we look at Trump's congressional address biblically? And what does that mean? Well, we should really look at, as if you're a Christ follower, you should look at everything biblically. I mean, so our worldview, the answers to the world, the way we look at the world, the way we respond to the world, the way we walk in the world is biblical. If you're a Christian, if you're a Christ follower, you're a biblically minded person, as we say. And so we should look at everything biblically, including our leaders, including what they say, yes, what they do. And it doesn't mean that you condone, just because you support somebody doesn't mean you condone them or not condone what they do or don't do. But the address in general, I think if I understood you correct, George, where you wanted to go tonight, is to, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, on Saturday on Sidebar, because it goes into that realm of that podcast as well. But I think we saw, I think you want to talk about this dichotomy, this split between the parties. Unfortunately, I mean, I've never seen such a divide, at least in my 52 years of being alive on this, and since I started paying attention to politics and then studying back. I know we had some intense times you were talking about before the show at the inception of our country, but to see where we're at now and to see, you know, even in my lifetime, how it was never like this, I think it's troubling, it's telling, but then where does it go from here? I mean, does it get worse? Does it get better? Have we bottomed out? I mean, you know, that's the question. Where's the church in all this? And so I think that's where you wanted to go. I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for you.
Salo, actually, I got to credit him. I know you're crediting me, but I'm going to credit Salo.
Sorry about that.
Salo, I can't really hear myself.
Oh, you can't? Really?
I can hear you.
In my piece very well.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's a little better now. Crank up the volume, please.
Not mine. Don't crank mine up.
So anyway, kudos to Salo, because I think he's onto something. How do we look at something like that, like a speech, biblically? And we're going to talk policy on Sidebar on Saturday, so
right.
we won't delve into that.
Unless someone has a question.
I realize there are legitimate differences on policy, and there always have been in this country, in the two parties that are Democrats and Republicans. There's always been vehement disagreements. Not just on policy, but even if there's agreements on policy, there's disagreements on how to implement a particular policy. And I think that's pretty healthy. I think that's good. What we saw last night wasn't disagreements. It was vilification. They were a vilification of the president, it seems to me, by the Democrats. And I'm not even evaluating this again on policy differences. I don't want to delve into that.
Well, real quick, before you get there, did Republicans vilify Biden?
Oh, there was nothing. The Republicans were not shy about how much they disliked Biden and the Biden presidency, and how much they detested his policies. No question about it. You mentioned the example in a speech from Biden. Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't exactly hold back,
right?
But I don't think anybody with functioning faculties can take what happened at Biden's speech and what she did and what happened last night. I mean, it's not even in the same galaxy. Let's remember a couple
you said
things.
Something though. You said you still don't support what she did.
No, I wouldn't have done what she did.
I mean, I guess what
I would have
I
just
I don't want to
listened, and then
I don't want us to be in this. And I'm not saying you're doing this. We as Christians, we call it truth, no matter what. We're not on the side of we're not on someone's side. We're on God's side. So that means truth applies to everybody, and we're not justifying a side. I mean, obviously, you know, you vote and you vote Republican. as do I. But I'm just saying, but that doesn't mean that your side doesn't do wrong, or we overlook it. We overlook it because they're on. That's the tribalism I talk about on Sidebar, and I know that's not what you're saying. I want to make sure that people don't misunderstand.
But I'm glad you
that.
bring it up because, and I'm going to say this deliberately to be critical,
Okay.
And not necessarily the people who are listening to us, but just our American society as a whole. This is what people do, and I think it's cheap logic and really sort of intellectual laziness. That if I somehow say that what the Democrats did was terrible, that I'm somehow de facto saying that everything the Republicans do is okay.
Yeah.
And that's not at all what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is that what we saw last night is truly I call it unbridled hatred. That's what I saw last night. And it's soul rot. It really is. It wasn't, hey, we disagree on Trump on some of his alleged accomplishments, because he went through a list of accomplishments, policies. It wasn't like that. It was what they did was rather dehumanizing. I mean, and I'll tell you why. It wasn't that their hatred for Trump was palpable. But if you look at what he did, he said, here are my policies and here are the implications of my policies. And he connected them to human stories. Now say what you want about Trump. Hate Trump all you want. Those are real human beings with real stories, and they're there by their own volition. It was very obvious. These people weren't there at gunpoint. They were there to illustrate, as a result of the experiences they've had in their lives, whether it was that they had been through something, and that a Trump policy or a Trump view was in some way benefiting them or had benefited them, and they were there as testimony to that. So hate Trump all you want, but recognize that those are real people. Laken Riley didn't fake die.
Yeah.
That's a real death.
Yeah.
That's a real loss.
That little
to people.
boy doesn't have fake brain cancer.
Right.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Those
I
are
get
real
it.
stories.
I get it.
Jocelyn, and I can't remember, forgive me, these are families of Laken Riley, and I can't remember the last name, Jocelyn something, another young woman that had been brutally murdered by illegal aliens who shouldn't have been here. Trump is saying, here's my policy. It's a clear contrast from the previous administration. He obviously didn't hold back on how much disdain he had for those policies. By the way, he's not alone. I mean, check out the results of the 2024 election. And he said, this has had real impact. And standing here among us today, and then check. He went through real human stories that have been impacted by his policies. And so Nico, I don't even have the words. I was enraged by what I was seeing. And I was deeply saddened at the same time. How do you snub? Because they did. They sat there stone-faced with their stupid effing signs. And you should see some of the scowls on their face because you could see the cameras sort of surveying over them depending on the network. I had a bunch of networks open. And I was just trying to make sure that I was doing as fair an analysis as I possibly could. And it's a legitimate question I'm asking here. How do you legitimately snub a kid? In what planet is it okay who's a little kid, DJ Daniel, who's battling terminal cancer? How do you do that? I mean, the kid is obviously overjoyed. I mean, you're blessing this child. Can we not come together on that? Can you not overcome your disdain for Trump because of what this kid is experiencing right now, which is a moment of validation as he nears, probably, may God choose some other path, the end of his life? Is it not okay for us to celebrate this kid? I mean, and it's probably his daddy who was there. So the kid's it's not like they have a wheelbarrow of candy at the end and he's faking it. His daddy's there. You could tell his daddy was overwhelmed with emotion. And then for him, I assume he was hugging the head of the Secret Service. I thought that was incredible. It was spontaneous. He just hugged the head of the Secret Service. And it was a beautiful moment. Yeah. And here's my point, Nico. If the nation's leaders can't come together.
I know. I agree with that.
Brother.
I agree.
We are in deep, deep shit.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart and it enraged me that we had gotten to this point. And so, you know how we are. We don't ever look at the
Nico,
symptom.
George, could I just plain devil's advocate? Is there some blame for Trump, the way he says, I could do some, there was some jabs he took, some simple ones. Could you blame him for that? Did he participate in that? Because sometimes I understand what Nico was saying. Do we see the other side the same way? Because sometimes as Christians, we're like, well, I'm not that bad. Well,
I'll tell you right now, this is where it gets into policy and political gamesmanship and delivery and all this stuff. And I really can't hear myself, Salo.
Yeah, I think it's the headphones. I don't know if you're connected well.
I mean, I could about 10 minutes ago. I could hear him just fine, and now I just hear my own voice inside my head. I don't really hear it coming through.
Those are demons, bro.
Yeah, I'm hearing exorcism. Let's get Father.
So I'm not really hearing it
Fulano
coming through,
here to help you
through. So that was question. I don't want to talk about. Well, the Trump. Within the first 7 minutes, they were shouting him down. Al Green's waving a cane. They had to be reprimanded by the Speaker of the House and Vice President of the United States. Say what you want about Marjorie Taylor Greene, that didn't happen. And they weren't any less divided when that happened.
Let me ask you a question. Did they have a right to protest?
Hold on. What did Trump do? From the get-go, the man gets up there. Yeah. Well, they're pouncing him.
They talked about it beforehand. I mean, this was planned. I mean, a lot of this stuff was planned.
Of course, this is all orchestrated.
They were reporting it.
And this isn't dissent. This is bitterness, resentment. It's hatred. I thought the whole effing thing was evil. I thought that whole demonstration was evil. That's the child, and that's just the beginning.
Your definition of evil.
Wow.
The definition of evil?
Mm-hmm. That's 7 episodes back. I'm joking. I'm joking. Stupid.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, well, it's the absence of good. I think evil is what results, and it gets into sin. Evil is what results when we sin, when we contradict the will of God with our own will. Yeah. And so I think if you're analyzing this as a Christian, there was just nothing Christian going on there, obviously. I was thinking about Philippians 4:8. It says, whatsoever is true and honest and good report and praiseworthy. Yeah. And I'm thinking, even if you're a non-Christian, most people can celebrate when a child gets a win, especially a child that's dying. Or when you're looking at people who have lost loved ones in such a brutal manner, young women with their lives ahead of them who are brutalized for absolutely no reason whatsoever, then we had people here who don't effing belong here, who broke the law and that were aided in their breakage of the law by the United States federal government. So you have these families that have had horrible tragedies visited upon them. And so you could tell that they're moved. And that now, because Trump was just saying, hey, look, we have law enforcement that's actually happening, and we are expulsing these people out of the country. These people are coming in here; they weren't vetted, and so they're committing crimes against American citizens. And here are 2 legitimate victims, 2 families who will never be the same. As you say, they have a new normal, and that new normal is devastating. And so you could tell these families are just overwhelmed with emotion, and they're obviously aligned with the policy change. So if you don't like the policy, fine. But grieve with the family. You can't do that? Something's really wrong. And they sat there sullen and silent when they should have been, frankly, acknowledging the evil that had been visited on these people and express some sort of empathy and compassion. And so instead, they were so just filled. You could just seething with hatred for Trump, that nothing else mattered.
Michael Semper says the past 4 years was led by evil. He says that they cannot celebrate the life of the young man. Also, Alicia Bryan says, preach it, Des Nuts. I'm going to say it that way because I know what they're doing, but Des Nuts says it's unexcusable. Deborah says, you're right, George, unbridled hatred. But Animal Talk, very interesting. And I love that Animal Talk gets on here and sidebar and stuff like that. But I did a screen capture today of one of his comments that I want to read. But right now he says, give me a break, George. I'm adding my own tone, okay? Give me a break,
Is that
George.
the same accent you have?
You mother... No, that's mine. Okay. He says, parading around a 13-year-old cancer survivor for a photo op less than a month after cutting $4 billion from cancer research is despicable. despicable, you know? And this is the same person that said this. This is the screenshot I got. I hope these terrorists destroy America and send inflation skyrocketing just so we can all suffer and starve together. Only after I get to point my finger at everyone's face who voted for him and tell them elections have consequences. Now you can die, you stupid son of a boop. That's Alamo talk.
Well, that's rare for even Alamo talk.
I know. I was like, what?
He's never usually that
was
spicy.
Was he drinking when he posted that?
I don't know. Maybe
I don't know. Anyway,
hijacked it.
But I've heard that a lot.
But there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot there. First of all, can we say the same thing about Biden and the administration for him deliberately destroying this country for leaving the borders open?
Yeah.
Why did Starr County go red? I mean, there was just so much that he was talking about. Why would you want to kind of bathe in misery if you think that this is where this is going? But it just fascinates me to see that people can look at the same scenario, and I wish you could read that again, what he said, the same scenario and come up with completely different conclusions from that. So when you talk about parading a child over for his own, golly, can we? I don't see it that way.
It's rubbish. Come on, Alamo talk. Give me a break. Parading. This isn't the first president in the history of the republic that has brought real human stories to help illustrate a simple principle.
Yeah.
Now you may disagree with the principle. You may disagree with the policy. Fair enough. We can hash that out on Saturday. I'd like to see you disagree with the policies though, because they have objective measurements behind them. By every objective measure, they're working. We'll save that for Saturday. But in terms of what happened there, this is not unprecedented. And your notion about cancer research, I think I've heard you make that.
About.
It's just completely false.
That's what I wanted to talk
about. That is absolutely false. The Republicans passed that measure. And I'm going to get animated about this because this is the kind of bullshit that gets paraded about. Oh, they stopped cancer research. It's just not true. They passed the measure. They forwarded it to the Senate. Chuck Schumer sat on it and then folded it into a continuing resolution.
But can I speak on this? Because I don't know if Alamo. I've actually had cancer. So I think I have since with the bullshit standard we have out there is if you've had it, then you can talk about it.
You have a right to say something.
Yeah, exactly. So I've actually had it, and when you look at cancer research, quote unquote, and the results of cancer research. Since, was it 1972 or what it was, 73 or 70, when Nixon said, we're going to declare this war on cancer. Well, we've lost. We've lost. Cancer's still number one or number two killer in the world. It's gotten worse.
More numbers.
I mean, when you look at the cancer research, if you live 5 years in one day, you're a success. When I had it in my early 40s, and I looked at their data, and I said, so you would put me up on a chart, Alamo Talk, that we were successful for the LaHood family because this son of a bitch lived to 47 in one day. Well, excuse my language. Cover your ears. Cover your ears. I'm warning you. Fuck that. Are you kidding me? That's. I wanted 45 years. I didn't want. So I said no to their standardized. I didn't do chemo. I didn't do radiation. I did it completely natural.
Really?
And I'm 9.5. Yeah, you knew that.
No chemo?
No, you knew that.
Yeah, but that's wow.
I mean, yeah, 9.5 years later. Now, I don't know what's going to happen 9.5 and 9 3/4. I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But I would have been a success for them, even if if in 9.5 years, if I'm not here talking to you guys, I would still be on their charts with their cancer research as a success. So I'm okay with them cutting cancer research because they're not doing real research. They're just not. When you have the same trilogy of chemo, radiation, surgery. Oh, wait a minute. Surgery, chemo, radiation. Oh, wait. Surgery, radiation, chemo. Wait a minute. Chemo, surgery, then radiation. And we're still dying left and right. We've made zero progress on it. Zero. And there's a whole history behind it. So please spare me. Please spare me how dare you cut cancer research. I used to get the St. Jude. I donated every year because I'd see these pictures of these precious children with bald head and all this. I was like, holy shit, the cancer's doing that. It's not the cancer. That's the treatment that's doing that to them. That's not the cancer doesn't do that to you. It's the treatment. It's mustard gas. I mean, do some research. I mean, so just all to say, sorry, just spare me with the whole, I can't believe you cutting. I wish they would cut it. I wish they would reallocate it to other things because there's a shit ton of people like me that are here 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, the rest of them cancer-free, completely healed, not doing a damn thing that mainstream medicine that has all this research behind it. No one's researching very hard. So That's what I wanted to say. That I lost my thought. So thanks, George. Sorry.
No, legit.
Thank you for that.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, it is what it
another
is.
side of the argument I wasn't going to make, but we'll take that side of the argument. I hear better without these solid. For some reason, the volume died. And I can hear much better now. What I was trying to say is that it's false. It's a false statement. It didn't actually happen. It's mythology. It's a Democrat talking point. It is simply not true. You need to go back to the congressional records and read them. This was an act that was originally signed into law. It's called the Gabriella Miller Act. I'm trying to remember the whole name of the act. Gabriella Miller Kids First Research Act. And it was signed into law in 2013. It was funded through fiscal year 2023. So obviously it came back up into the roster to vote on. The Republicans passed it out of the House. And it went to the Senate. And it languished in the Senate since March of 2024 until the right time that it could be used as a political weapon. How do I know that? Because it could have passed at any time. Chuck Schumer could have brought it forward to a vote. Never did. So what does he do? A continuing resolution comes up, and they're throwing all kinds of shit in there that they know the Republicans aren't going to accept. And what's part of it? The Gabriella Miller Act. They throw it in there. Now, if the Republicans don't accept the continuing resolution, they refuse to fund kids' research.
Right.
See?
Yeah. I don't. That's
It's a crock of shit.
I know-
Alamo Talk,
yeah.
you're a bright guy. I can tell by the questions that you ask most of the time. But brother, please do some reading. And do try to stay out of Mother Jones and Vox and CNN. Enough already.
You haven't gone to eat with him, right, Nico?
I asked him to. No, he hasn't.
You know what he looks like?
No.
I'm curious too. Well, anyway, because he just put, well, good for you. I'm going to add my own tone.
No, I like him. I like Alamo
Me too.
Talk.
Me
like
too.
him.
Yeah. He says, well, I don't know if after this, but he says, well, good for you, Nico. I'm going to give him another tone. Not everyone is as fortunate as you. You should be glad instead of bitching. That's what he said. That's what he says. Yeah. Robert Gonzalez says, how do you all take Alamo Talk serious?
No, we do. He's serious. I know he is serious. He's just seriously wrong a lot of times. But it's okay. I
take
him.
the statement serious enough to answer it.
Yeah.
Everybody deserves a response.
Sure.
I don't
Yeah.
take the content very seriously.
Yeah.
But I take the fact that it's a legit statement.
So we want to thank everybody that's watching, and we need to get back to the topic of, can we look at Trump's...
This is a clash of worldviews. This isn't,
True.
getting out of the policy stuff.
Yes.
It's a clear clash of worldviews. I have never seen a party behave like this, ever. This was reprehensible and unconscionable. If you're an external enemy of the United States, take China. And China's looking in, they're saying, what do they need us for?
Yeah.
I mean, at this rate, these people will eat themselves alive. This was horrific. It truly was. And I'm glad that it was called out. I'm glad that it was called out because Trump had talked about the consequence. He talked about the symptom. We should talk about why is that? These people are so steeped in bitterness and resentment that no matter what he said or did, he's absolutely correct. It doesn't matter what I say or do. It really doesn't. It'll always be spun into something negative. They can't find any reason to rejoice. He said that at the beginning of the speech, and they spent an hour proving him right. As he brought, again, legitimate human stories before the Congress that every American, and the polling bears this out, every American related and resonated with.
George, let me ask you a question.
Something's wrong here. This is a soulish problem.
Let me ask you a question, George. For example, you're making the statement that they think that Trump cannot do anything right. Can we say that Trump did something wrong, or the Republicans did something wrong last night? Can we say that?
That's not, I don't think that's...
They didn't do anything wrong?
Who's they?
I don't...
Republicans or Trump.
Well, sure. I mean, I didn't agree with all of his speech.
Oh, you didn't? What did you agree with?
No, I mean, just stylistically. I mean,
stylistic?
Yeah, and just some of the things and some of the shots. I mean, but look, the guy's been through hell. When you're punched, when you've been in as many fights as he's been in, I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying, look, there's explanations and there's justifications.
Got it. Okay.
I'm not giving you a justification. I'm giving you an explanation. There's a reason. And I think, you know, when we talk about punch drunk, when you talk about, I mean, look, I mean, he's entitled to be a little pissed. I mean, he's been through a lot of hell. Yeah. I mean, he's still standing. He's gonna take some shots, and whether I would do it or how I would do it, that's another story. Where some of them, I mean, I guess they didn't. They were shots over the bow, whatever. But I mean, that's Trump. Will you take the good with the bad? I mean,
sure. So
I'd like us to take that up on sidebar because I have a very different view on that, and it's because And I'll say this, it's because nothing's changed since the November election. This is the same shit that led people in droves across political spectra to vote for Trump. People who have never voted for Trump before, who are nowhere near being a fiscal or social conservative, who voted for Trump across ideological worldview and across, demographics, racial and otherwise. They came out in droves. You would think.
So, but what part do you disagree with?
What I'm saying is that nothing's changed. And Trump was simply calling out the fact that their recalcitrance had not changed at all and had intensified actually since the November election. He's basically saying these people, literally, no matter what I do, they will sit here stone-faced. They can't smile. If I do the most wondrous, objectively wondrous thing, they will still resist me. They'll still sit here and scowl and refuse to smile. They won't even applause. And I think that's legitimate politically. So we should talk about that on Sidebar, why that statement I think was politically legitimate. I wanted to get away from what Trump said because I think it's not about Trump. This is way beyond Trump.
Yeah, I agree.
This comes from deep within the soul of these people. Again, please explain to me why it's okay. Even if you think the Republicans are parading a kid, let's impugn their motives for a moment. Let's say that Trump did in fact mean to parade this kid out. Why can't we rejoice with the kid?
I got it. You're right.
That's all I'm saying.
That's true.
Okay, and these pieces of filth couldn't even do that. And they basically illustrated for Americans how rotten their worldview is, which is bitter and resentful. Their worldview is motivated by bitterness, division. That's all that motivates them, which is why at the end of the day, they will do whatever it takes to be in power because they don't see human beings as human. It's all about gaining power. That was a little kid. These were broken families who deserved a moment of acknowledgement and respect, and they couldn't even muster that. I'd like to know what the hell that has to do with Trump.
Yeah, no, look, you're right. I mean, and someone like Alamo Talk, I think he professes to be a biblically minded man. I mean, he's some of the comments he's made in the past, God bless you in this.
Well, good. Then surely we must be in agreement.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. So that's why let's get back to this biblical understanding. So as Christians, if you're watching and you're a Christian, I mean, we are Christ followers, right? We accept Christ as the second person of the Trinity. He is God incarnate. He came to live a life we can't live, to die a death that we truly deserve because we have sinned and we're rotten without him, and offer us a gift that we didn't earn. That's the gospel. That's the good news of the gospel, no matter how rotten we are. And all of us are rotten in just different ways. I promise you that. Alamo Talk, me, you, whatever, Trump, we're all rotten without Christ. So what is our marching orders? Our marching orders are twofold, right? To know God, John 17:3, and to make him known to the world, Matthew 28:19. To speak the truth in love, Ephesians 4:15, and I get that. To do it without timidity, 2 Timothy 1:7. To sit down and reason with people. To love your neighbor as yourself, right? We've given an example of the Good Samaritan. And who's my neighbor? They asked. Well, here it is. Someone you don't think is your neighbor. Extend love to. To serve, to better to be served than to be served. To better to give than to receive. To live a selfless life, to gain by losing. I mean, it's completely upside down, but it's very service driven. Now, I get it. I mean, the criticisms are legit. I mean, Trump's strengths can be his weaknesses. That's everybody's. I mean, everybody's strength taken to an extreme can be a weakness. And there's constructive criticism you can give of Trump, of course. I mean, I wonder, I've never heard Alamo Talk or anybody else criticize, quote unquote, their side. I mean, even people that I know that are close. But we're supposed to be different. We're not supposed to be looking like the world. Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So whatever the world says, 1 John 2:16, whatever the world says, we do the opposite. I mean, so if the world says A, then we do B, and B is following Christ, by the way. I mean, we're not supposed to look like the world. And so if we look like the world and we're not being set apart from the world, then we really need to analyze how close we are walking with Christ and how fully persuaded we are of God's word, and that we're going to stand before him someday and give an account for what we've been given to steward. And your mind
Absolutely.
is something you're supposed to steward. Your advocacy is something you're supposed to steward. Our country is something we're supposed to steward. Our families are something we're supposed to steward. Our resources, I mean, go on and on. It's all about stewardship, because this is not ours.
100%.
I mean, if you're a Christ follower, none of this shit's ours. We're renting it, but renting with a responsibility. We have a duty, a responsibility to make sure we turn it back in a better condition than we received it. The talons, don't bury them, come back and multiply them. What do we do? Are we doing that with our lives? I mean, there's a lot there. So that's my mindset. And so because I do my best to look at the world biblically and live and be persuaded by Christ, I'm not afraid to criticize my side. My side is above me. It's not to right or my left. And so that's the challenge I have to people that are Christians that are on both sides of this. Even if you're on whatever side, this side. Okay, are we on God's side? Not politically correct, we're biblically correct. We've talked about that before. And truth matters to God. He cannot lie. He can't lie. There's very few things that God can't do. He cannot murder. He cannot lie. He cannot be unjust. He can't. So by definition, he's the definition of justice. Right? We've talked about that before. So can we look at it? Yes, we can. And if we look at his address biblically, we can criticize it and support it. That's what we can do, because our standard is the Bible. It's not Trump. It's not the Republican Party. It's definitely not the Democrat Party.
So philosophically, setting aside policy, but philosophically, he was contrasting philosophies. There's been a 4-year governing philosophy that just preceded me. I dismiss that philosophy. I embrace a different philosophy. I embrace the patriotism. I embrace human dignity. I actually think there are two sexes. We're not confused about whether there's male and female. We're not confused about whether males should be in girls' locker rooms. We're not confused about that. We're not confused about whether girls should be playing or men should be playing girl sports. We're not confused about those kinds of things. We're not confused about cultural fundamentals.
Not anymore.
But Trump is. I'm speaking in the third person.
I know. But Trump is sort of not anymore though, because Republicans and Trump, even if you look at old interviews, they were very hesitant to talk about that before. In all fairness, this is a fairly recent phenomenon, which is not really a phenomenon. It's just it's so simple to me. But if you look at old interviews, Republicans weren't as bold as they are now, and neither
Republicans weren't as bold as they are now.
And with all due respect,
I don't know
I saw an interview
that
Trump wasn't that clear about it.
Okay, I've never seen Trump equivocate on an issue.
No, not recently. I just want to be fair. Look, like I said, we're looking at this biblically. I want to make sure that we're just. I mean, I support him. I voted for him twice. He can't run again, but I support what he's doing. I disagree at times on how he presents it. That's fine. We're entitled to do that. But I just want to be fair. I mean, this is something different. I'm glad that the party has gotten bolder. The church even wussed out. I mean, so at times, all I'm saying is I just want to be fair in our assessment.
I wouldn't defend the church. I defend the political conservative movement on the issues of sex and gender way before I defend the church. The church has been backpedaling on this issue for a while. I grant your point. I don't see that kind of backpedaling or equivocation from legit conservatives. But maybe you can educate me. I genuinely don't. I want to concede your point. I've just not seen that. But they also haven't been marching it. It hasn't been a mantra for them. It hasn't, like the Democrats have. This has been. I mean, and they're still falling on that sword as we speak. I mean, they literally refuse to vote.
I know,
not one vote.
Not one.
For a recent bill that actually acknowledges that there's such a thing as a male and a female, and that you actually shouldn't have guys lingering around and dangling their penises in female locker rooms and female private spaces. Like this should be a controversial thing. Something's deeply, deeply wrong with this party. Not every Democrat. I bet you there were people there who may have been, not a lot, but a few of those Democrat leaders who were on the fence, who were probably cringing at the notion that they weren't standing up and rejoicing over that little boy.
I'm sure.
But they know what they're dealing with. They're dealing with a party that will silence them, and they're not going to put up with that shit, and they're afraid, and so they sat back. But the majority of them, and the philosophy that they wrote in on isn't worth two shits, and it's dangerous to this country. And people need to understand where it comes from, because this isn't going away with one election or even two elections. This is a philosophy. It's a Marxist view that's steeped in bitterness and division and resentment and cherishes only power. This is Marxist communism, people. This is no longer your daddy's Democrat Party. That's why I think it's important that we analyze this on the basis of worldview. You've got a guy up there, flawed as he is, who is, talking about America in very positive terms. Our best days are ahead. He's talking about patriotism. He's talking about getting criminals out of the country so that people can actually not worry about walking out at night and being lynched. Okay, he's talking about economic prosperity. He's talking about not being taken advantage by allies. Right. Yes, that's right. I said allies. People who have been so-called political and economic friends who have been taking advantage of the country, that have been, basically aiding the impoverishing of Americans over the decades. Trump is basically parroting policies, actions that Americans ratified and voted for. That's all he was doing. This is not, by the way, a State of the Union address. This is just a joint address of Congress where he simply rattles off accomplishments. That's it. I don't know why they couldn't sit there and just listen to him. And then he brought in human stories to illustrate what he believed and what he is saying are accomplishments over the last 45 days. And this turned into a very nasty, very dark, hateful exchange that was, driven by this party that is not even close to what it used to be.
Let's look at what Scripture says. What are we supposed to do to people that persecute us? It's a question. What are we supposed to do?
We bless.
We bless and pray for them, right? We bless those that. And how do you bless them? Speaking the truth in love to them, first of all. Trying to correct them, making sure that be concerned with their salvation. I mean, if we believe this stuff, if we believe that we're going to all leave this earth, which last time I checked, that's 100%, everyone's leaving this earth, and that we're going to stand before the creator of the universe and the architect of everything and give an account for our lives, and it's going to start with whether we said yes to Jesus, right, and accepted him as our Lord and Savior. That's where it starts. That's where it ends. I mean, there's more assessment there. You and I have taught on this before, George. But that's where it starts. If we believe that, so we're supposed to be blessing our enemies. That's why I'm saying I want to look at this biblically. And this applies to Republicans too. Okay, this doesn't sound a one-sided criticism. I'm saying biblically, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to pray for those and bless those and love your enemy. Love them. Now, part of loving them is giving them tough love, and it's speaking the truth to them in love, right? Ephesians 4:15. And trying to correct them, 2 Timothy 2:4. 2 Timothy 4:2. Really try to encourage, correct, and rebuke. Really try to get them back on track. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so when you look at the behavior from last night, for me at least, I cannot tie, and this goes to Alamo Talk or whoever else supported it or doesn't like Trump. Again, to George's point, it's not about Trump. How do you tie, if you're a Christian, how do you tie the behavior, and then I'm gonna tack on the ideology of the left, of the Democrats, to a biblical worldview? And I've asked that to people
before. But finish
before.
your thought, though, because you're saying...
and I'm waiting still.
The way we think about this as Christians, we bless those who persecute, do good to those who persecute us. But there's legitimate decorum.
Well, that's separate. I have a whole... Well, let me tell you why I take this personal. This is beside my biblical...
Let me ask my question.
Okay, go ahead.
I need to ask you my question.
Okay, go. You going to ask me a question?
Yes, I am. So finish your thought is what I was going to say. That there's legitimate decorum that needs to be as a matter of respect in the Capitol. So what are you suggesting? Are you suggesting what do you think the Speaker of the House should have done? Do you think it was appropriate for him to have Mr.
talking
Green
about him? No.
exposed? Okay, so what is the response in that forum? What is the response to those Democrats? You're not suggesting personal counseling of every single one of them.
No.
Okay, so what? Where's the overlap between the Christian concern?
I'm just saying that if we're looking at this thing biblically, it also says in Ecclesiastes 3, there's a time for everything under the sun, and Jesus kicked the shit out of people in the temple. He didn't ask them to go to counseling. So you finished your thought. Okay. So yeah, I wasn't talking. I'm saying I'm trying to tie behaviors to a biblical understanding that pleases the Lord. That's all I'm saying. And so I challenge people. Number one, how can you tie what they did yesterday to a biblical principle? And then how can you tie their ideology to a biblical principle? That's all. I mean, that's where
I want
stand.
every single one of those individuals, every single one of those people to come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And should God use me in some potential, I'm open to that.
Yep.
To extend compassion and understanding. I'm not going to be a wallflower, but I want to be part of that. Absolutely. Politically, I want them to be completely devastated, and I hope they never win another election again.
Oh yeah,
because
course.
the worldview that
Sure.
that they're obviously espousing is deeply destructive to this country. So both things can be true, and we
Sure.
and so we can identify the human element. I don't want anything nasty to happen to them as people. I really don't. Like I said, I want them to come to. I mean, they're miserable people. I don't want them to be miserable. I really genuinely, my heart breaks for them. But I have to say, I was very angry about this opportunity being squandered as millions are watching. And these are our leaders. This is the best we have to offer, Nico. What does it say? So as a citizen, I was enraged. As a Christian, I was brokenhearted. And both of those things, we ought to be able to go back and forth between those two rather freely, and we're not contradicting. We're not contradicting our Christianity by condemning those actions. I'm not condemning the people, but I'm certainly condemning those actions in the strongest of terms. And I hope politically that there are very, very harsh consequences, because that's destructive. And my worry, and it's not isolated to that. This is a worldview that has had what a Marxist philosopher has called the long march through the institutions. It's deeply in our academia, it's in the media, it's entertainment, it's in the judiciary, it's everywhere. So I'm concerned about it. Every Christian should be dropping on their knees, praying, and ask God for mercy on this country.
Well, pray and do things. We got to pray and do, meaning defend the truth, advocate, try to change hearts and minds, try to be, reason people, give an apologia for our position, right? Absolutely, we're supposed to be doing that. But I think if you do a different analysis, and that's probably for a different show, you analyze how do we get here, and I think it falls square on the lap of the church. I do. I mean, that we've talked about that before. I mean, the church got sterilized and got their nuts chopped, and so they were afraid to offend somebody. At some point, the church got addicted to being liked. And they compromised truth in the process, and so they misread Matthew 5. Instead of saying be a peacemaker, they said, well, I'm going to be a peacekeeper. And there's nothing. You can be a beekeeper, you can't be a peacekeeper. There's nothing biblical about that, because when you try to keep the peace, people with that mindset, they'll do anything to keep the peace, including compromising the truth. And I think that's what we saw happen. Matthew 5 talks about being a peacemaker, meaning do whatever in my power, as far as it lies within your power, right? Romans 12, make peace with all men. I love that, as far as it lies within your power. Mm-hmm. And within your power means to speak the truth, God's truth, because he is the truth, not my truth, not relative truth, God's truth. To speak the truth in love, do it with courage and lack of timidity, but also with the heart to try to lead people to Christ so there can be true transformation. Remember, we talk about 2 Timothy 4, encourage, correct, and rebuke, right? Encourage, correct, and rebuke. Every situation doesn't call for the same response. So that's where my heart's at. That's where I wish but it lays square on the lap of the church. The church lost its way years ago as a whole, the body of Christ, not each individual church. Every church is different. And I think we're seeing a resurgence because there's a true thirst. We talked about that this morning in Bible study. There's a true thirst for truth. There's a hunger for what are these absolutes. I didn't come up with this myself. I heard this said many, many years ago, but it's true. Every person searches for absolutes in 4 areas. We all want absolutes in these 4 areas. Atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic person, Christian, whatever. Evil, love, forgiveness, and justice. What are the absolute definitions of those? I want to know exactly what to strive for. What does evil look for? Like, what does it really mean to love? Not love wins, not love is love, and your definition. What's true we call as Christians agape love. What about forgiveness? It's hard. Forgiveness is not a feeling. Well, when they apologize, no, asshole, it's you're called to forgive. Well, if they repent, no, you're called. It's a choice. It's not a feeling. You will never feel like forgiven, and Jesus modeled that on the cross. And then justice. What is it? No justice, no peace, no justice. Okay, well, what is justice really? What is real justice? Is it justice and fill in the blanks? And we can use example after example. And as the example goes that I heard years ago, there is one incident where ultimate evil, love, forgiveness, and justice culminated, and it was on the cross. Evil for once was taken care of, right? The ultimate expression of love was shown. Forgiveness for the whole world, a propitiation and atonement for sin, for evil out there, was on the cross. And then true justice was had. A perfect law was broken. A perfect sacrifice was given. Blood is the healing part of it. Jesus, the Lamb of God, the true perfect Lamb of God who took away the sins of the world, was laid bare. He gave his life. They didn't take it from him. And then we have it. And so it's about the cross. To me, it's always about the cross. And the church has screwed it up for so many years. And I think they're making a course correction. But I think this rot that you're talking about, this moral rot,
yes, I
think it falls right on the lap of the church.
Well, we were talking about the rot of the institutions, and the church. The church is an institution that has been largely rotted, and by really an inversion of the gospel. They've allowed the gospel to be rewritten into the image of this Marxist dialectic, where they analyze morality, biblical truth, and societal issues, really through a false gospel, and so I think prayer and education, we ought to be praying for our leaders, praying for our pastors, praying for our national leaders, and we ought to be praying. I want to go back to Philippians 4:8 because I think it's a flagship verse that ought to characterize how every believer conducts himself in and out of political issues. Finally, brothers, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. And if you do meditate on these things, I'll be able to tell, because that's what's going to come out. That's what's going to come out of your mouth. It's what your conduct will exemplify.
Check out this comment.
I was horrified last night. This was a clash of, again, set the policies aside. You had this clash of bitterness with joy, legitimate opportunity to show joy over something that is not political. It's just human and good and beautiful. And they weren't able to make the leap. That concerns me. So I want to see that reversed, brother. I do. Breaks my heart.
So Alamo Talk made this comment first. He says, Trump is dangerous. Trump's reckless policies are putting American job security economy at risk. And you know it. Check this out. He says, let's talk about the 80,000 U.S. veterans about to lose their jobs. He says, did you vote for that? That's Alamo Talk. But check this out. But then Valerie Barrera says this. I'm a retired federal employee and a Vietnam-era veteran. The cuts in the federal workforce has been done by every president since 1990. It's called a reduction in force. It's nothing new. Even Clinton and Obama had a RIF. It's necessary to separate the wheat from the chaff, thus saving government funds. There's a ton of government waste. I, for one, am glad to see the RIFs and auditing of government organizations. Perspective.
George. This is typical. It really is. And well said, Valerie. You stole my thunder, because it's analogous to the response I gave last time, which was, there's really nothing new here. This is rather unprecedented. But because it's Trump, it's not okay. Like you and I were shooting around the other day. Trump apparently is the only president that can't avail himself of the powers vested in the presidency under Article 2 of the Constitution. Every other president can, but not Trump. Somehow it's not okay. Like Marco Rubio said, this is an issue. I thought we were supposed to stop wars. I thought if this was a Democrat president, he ought to be probably saying he should be getting a Nobel Peace Prize, right? But this is what I mean. This is such virulent hatred for Trump and what he represents to them. And that is deeply concerning, because most Americans are on board with loving country, loving the ideals of America, celebrating a country that elevates and actually memorializes concept of freedom in its founding documents: individual liberty, protection of religious conscience, the ability to express what you believe religiously and otherwise in the public square without fear of reprisal from the government. These are ideals that we ought to be celebrating. Trump, for all his flaws, has implemented and policies in Trump 1.0 and now objectively. See, I'm detailed. Every apologist for Trump's policies or anybody's policies should be detailed. Saying that 80,000 vets are being let go because of Trump's careless policies is foolish. It doesn't take into consideration the details. There's lots of details that you're missing here. I am for any policy that addresses inefficiencies in government, because at the end of those inefficiencies, Nico, are human beings who will be hurt. That's why I care about policy. I care about politics because I care about human beings. And I care about human beings because God cares about human beings. No one cared more about human beings than Jesus Christ, who left heaven, turned earth on its head, because God cares that much about human beings and the impact of sin and rebellion on human beings. He cared to do something about it.
Becky?
So that's what motivates me. Go ahead, bud.
Becky Garcia, thank you for your comment. She says, I don't trust him at all. He really needs God. He says he's a person of faith. I just don't feel it. That's what Becky says. Thank you, Becky.
Did she sound like that?
Wow.
Did she sound like that when she said it?
I'm sorry, what's Becky regarding?
Yeah, I'm going to put... I think she's talking about Trump. Maybe she's talking about Trump. Victor Hugo Salcedo says, persecution can be such as verbal abuse, social exclusion, physical violence, which is what we are fighting. Okay, here somebody else. George, I was going to ask you, in regards to decorum, what's allowable? Are they allowed to just protest and make noise? Are they allowed?
Well, I think the problem is that the man was interrupted. Okay. He couldn't talk.
But everything else was okay?
Well, I mean, we've had people in both Republican and Democrat
because one of the things,
administrations where people have spoken out. You remember a couple of years ago when Obama was up there. You lie. Remember that?
Yeah.
And that was that. And he was summarily chastised by
one of the reasons I was telling you,
GOP leaders.
When Trump was coming in, and the Democrats had their little paddles, right, that they were spanked with later. But anyway, they were coming. They had their paddles. Two of the Republicans just took it away from them and threw them away. Is that okay? Or could we say that that's wrong?
Look,
No.
I'm going to go back to what Hakeem Jeffries.
I wouldn't have done
their
that.
leader said it wasn't okay. Their leader apparently wasn't okay with the paddles, but they did it anyway.
Wow.
This is a
There's a lot
complete
of Democrats were bothered by it last night. A lot of Harold Ford. I mean, there's a lot of Democrats that didn't.
I'm sure, brother. I'm just saying, not in that chamber. And those are the people that have been elected. And the people that were bothered by it, like we just said a few minutes ago, apparently were too chicken shit to do anything about it. And I don't know. They could have stood up and dared to be different. We got to be careful with this line of argumentation. I notice is consistent, regardless of which Democrat it is. It tends to be reductionistic. The reason why Marxism is so attractive is because it's so simplistic. It reduces very complex issues of human failing and human conflict into the haves and have-nots, the good guys and the bad guys, the rich and the poor. And so that's very attractive. And it also, as I mentioned before, is steeped in bitterness and resentment. And that's true of every human being. I mean, this is a question, maybe we can end on it. Maybe we can pick it up on sidebar.
Yeah.
How is it that such a grossly failed political system, a century of failures, objectively so, its major crash and burn, as we've talked about before, was in 1989 with really sort of the collapse of the Berlin Wall. I mean, that was the epitome of the collapse of communism. I mean, it left the country in economic ruin. Society was a disaster. 100 years of failure, 72 to be accurate, since 1917 and through the Stalin era, through 1989. We have decades and decades, Nico, of proven failures. How is it that ideology continues to persist? Now, people say, well, I mean, they're very good at local activism and power politics. That's shit they do.
Yeah.
But I think it's the why. And and last night, it seems to me, for me, it was a glaring reminder that it persists because it's rooted in resentment. And that is the Achilles heel of every human being. And Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, for everything he talked about conflict in marriage, he talked about interpersonal conflict. But at the root of every single one of those, Nico, Matthew 5:3 to Matthew 7:27, at the root of the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes is the notion of forgiveness. That we can't hold each other. We can't hold this personal debt over one another. We can't live in resentment. We can't live in bitterness. And if we do that, then a wilderness of horrors follows, right? I mean, families break apart, marriages break apart, friendships break apart, societies break apart. And that's what I saw last night. I saw these are elected leaders that couldn't even rejoice when the least among us was being celebrated, because so deep is that bitterness, and it's that deep because this worldview has been allowed to grow and fester. I mean, it's a contagion in American society. That's why my heart broke. And so what's the solution? The solution is the cross, ultimately, because unless men's hearts change at that level, there's no hope. But we don't force people to be Christians in America, do we?
Well, let's leave with that, since you said about that. So we know that Ephesians 2:8-9 gives us our salvation. For it is grace, but we are saved through faith. So this is not a work of your own. It is a gift from God, not by works, so that no one can boast. And why do we get saved for? Why are we saved? So we can be God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works. Good works don't save us, but the good works are evidence that we're saved, which God prepared in advance for us to do. But then we go further down, and we're talking about Jew and Gentile and this division, any division, whether it was BLM back in the old days, incorporated hostilities, any groups that are doing. In verse 14, Ephesians 2:14, for he himself is our peace, shalom, right? Jesus is the Prince of Peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. How? By setting aside in his flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself, not in the world, not in politics, one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God through the cross, by which he put to death their hostility. So that's how you biblically
to gain the forgiveness of Christ and the eternal life of joy and peace that we get with him is to give up the right to hold each other in contempt. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's question. I'm just going to ask a question because we're the topic. Can we look at Trump's congressional address biblically? Nico, hypothetical. How could Trump? Could have Trump behaved more biblically last night?
For me, stylist, I have a different style. Yeah. I mean, understanding Trump's where he's been, I would have said, look, I'm going to say some things that are not going to make everyone in this room happy. But I'm going to say the truth. I'm going to ask for the respect that has been shown to you when you were in control. The American people have spoken. And what I'm going to say today reflects their will. I'm here by the will of the people, not by my will, not by the Republicans' will, not by the Democrats' will, by the will of the people, the majority of the people. That's what I'm going to say. I know there's hostility in this room, but what I'm going to ask for us today, I'm going to say some things that are not going to make you happy, but we can come together for the people. If we really are a country of the people, by the people, for the people, it's not for each party, either party. That's more of a unifying. That's how you should, and you can still say all the stuff you said. You can still even say, give me some grace, because I've been through some stuff. I mean, there's ways to, and look, he was funny at times. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I didn't like the speech. I would have handled it differently. That's it. But I can't say for sure. I mean, I have to go back and analyze what was not biblical versus what was biblical. I mean, if you're speaking the truth, it's biblical. People have sent me stuff that certain people have criticized and fact-checked him and said that he's a liar. And I got to fact-check the fact-checkers these days, right? So, I mean, I don't believe any of these son of bitches. I mean, so...
to me, one of the biggest things in regards to being biblical or whatever is the way he approaches things or says things. I think a lot of things he says is okay. But I think there's, I don't know, a little bit more graceful, more loving. I don't know. I don't know if we are too far from it already.
Well, I mean, it depends. Look, I mean, because if you read Matthew 23, the 7 woes to the Pharisees, Jesus would have been criticized. I mean, I know
but you just read share the truth in love.
I think
I'm curious to know what that would look like.
No. Hold on a second. The man first came down that escalator in 2015. It's been 10 years. There's a 10-year backdrop here.
Yeah.
This isn't the beginning. This is really, hopefully, the end. Not the end of his president. I'm saying the end of this nonsense I believe that politically, I do. This needs to be completely destroyed. This worldview needs to be destroyed once and for all. I believe that the GOP and GOP leadership and the GOP ought to do everything in our power politically and through the levers of power in the United States under the Constitution to destroy this worldview once and for all. This is rotten. It is deeply anti-American, and it is anti-God. Marxism deposes God. He wasn't subtle about that.
Yeah.
This is all about power and about humiliating. I mean, read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky.
Yeah.
It's about isolating your opponent, ridiculing your opponent, vilifying your opponent, paralyzing your opponent, doing whatever it takes to destroy your opponent. What I'm saying is don't do that. Destroy their worldview. In other words, take the power away. Make sure they never get elected to office again. We need to be going on offense. I don't know if Trump is signaling a move in that direction, Nico, and saying enough is enough. I'm going to call these people out for what they are. This is a willful, deliberate obstruction. The voters don't matter. Their voters are invisible to them. This is evil at its core. I would use the word evil. And what did they do, Nico? Let's just be fair. Since you want to be fair, he said this in the first 7-8 minutes of his speech. And then they spent an hour proving him right. They're okay with this. And this wasn't accidental. So, Salo, I don't know if this is political gamesmanship. I mean, Nico said, and he's right, he's quoting Ecclesiastes, there's a time and a season for everything. We can probably debate whether a joint session of Congress is the place to do this. But let's give him some slack in the sense there's 10 years of bullshit that he's had to deal with. He's also given plenty.
So you're not justifying, you like Nico. You're just.
I'm not. I'm saying there's a question mark whether because I agree with what Nico said. That's my way too.
Yeah.
I lean towards that. But I haven't been through what Trump has been through.
Gotcha.
And this isn't the beginning of a relationship. We're kind of at the end here, a very, very tattered relationship where he's been, I think we can obviously objectively say he's been unjustly treated.
I just finished the trial again this week. And so there's decorum that you have to have. And I mean, there's over 23 years of practicing law, almost 23 years. There's been some trials where if opposing counsel would have signed a waiver, I would have straightened their jaw for them. I mean, it gets intense. Depending on what what's going on and what the trial's about, what you're prosecuting.
Did you exhibit that on the courtroom floor? I mean,
there's been
emotionally and everything.
There's been a lot of heated stuff. I mean, between lawyers. I mean, I'm passionate, dude. But you don't
forgive me in chambers with
in between when the jury's not there. No, when you don't break the court. If the judge calls you down, now you can be held in contempt. I mean, you can be arrested if you have to, and you can be disciplined by the state bar.
But you don't do that in a courtroom before a jury. Okay.
You'd be stupid to. Yeah, and well, look, there's very few times where
if you say that you'll be stupid.
I've had a witness. Just because you asked, I had a witness one time was just ridiculously difficult and obstructionist and disrespectful, and I tore into him in front of the jury. I mean, I didn't cuss him out. And the jury said we won the case, and the jury said you were very appropriate to do that. You could have gone.
Is this recorded anywhere?
The one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No, are you kidding me? I mean, but all I'm saying is for the way they acted, forget about being a Christian for a second, to me was unprofessional. It just was unprofessional. We're not a third world country. I've seen videos of Iran or Parliament or wherever, Taiwan or some shit, and they're doing their, ninja moves on each other. I mean, we don't do that here in this country. Yeah. I think not standing, I think even I'd rather you boycott. I'd rather you step out. I'd rather you show up, stand when you think you can, because you're standing on a principle. You don't just hate the other side because they're the other side. There's a principle undergirding you. Because if you believe in principles, it doesn't matter who's advocating that principle. You're going to support the principle.
Exactly.
Whoever the advocate is secondary. And so, and then have your press conferences. Do all the shit you want to do. Go to social media and talk whatever you want to say. That would have been my recommendation for them, and I think they would have saved a lot of face. I really think they did the party a lot of harm last night.
Joey Catalina says, Trump derangement syndrome is so intense that if he rescued a kitten from a tree, critics would accuse him of colluding with cats to distract from real issues.
I don't mind.
This
losing the
is
cat.
soul rot.
Forget the gato. Forget the pussy. Oh, that's why it all comes full circle.
We have
Grab him by the pussy.
again a worldview that's invested in as many Americans being at each other's throats as possible.
Well,
that's the source of power.
Yeah.
That needs to be repudiated in the
want the
strongest of
division.
terms. And I wonder, and I don't know. We only have about 2 polls. I'm interested in those dynamics. I want to study them over the next few days. I wonder if Trump, if the way he reacted and the things that he said, if it isn't going to be, appointed to him as righteous anger in some way. Like this was where he felt it was appropriate to call out in front of the entire nation. What was almost predictable, unfortunately, because I think you're right. Not only was it planned, but I think he expected to be shouted down like that. He wanted Americans to
Next
see it.
week we need to do righteous anger. That's a good topic. Righteous anger.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
And if you don't like it, then don't read Jesus.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this as much as we enjoy having these conversations. As always, Salas reminds us to share this with someone you think may benefit from it, and we hope to see you next week. God bless you. Have a great week. Bye-bye.